Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. We'll be talking today about real estate pain. There's so many movies or reality program out there that talks about real estate, but nothing really shows you the drama, the hardness, its pain that goes on behind the scene. To build a good real estate takes time. It takes lots of years of practice. It takes human connection. It takes being a good listener. It takes getting on with different agents as well. My guest, McKenzie Ryan, will be sharing her story. But before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about McKenzie. McKenzie is a former child star who started her career as a gymnast and a ballerina before she started in the field of real estate. Her passion for real estate started at a very young age when she was 12. And she did her first deal at a very young age in her teens when she was 17. We'll be talking to her about the difficulties and challenge that comes in being a real estate, how she goes about planning her day in the morning, in the afternoon, and at nighttime to be organized, to make sure she has the perfect day so she can give her best to her clients. We also talk about her love for performing in the public, landing her first deal at the age of 12, and how she became a child star of a gymnast set and how that set her up for a career in real estate. I'm just really passionate about this conversation because I think so many of us can learn from this conversation, not just those in real estate market, but anyone out there who's hustling, who's really trying their best to make the best out of the profession they're in. How, when you're determined, you put in hard work, you could always win the prize. Meet my amazing guest, McKenzie Ryan, as she shares her story. Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. As I said in my introduction, today's conversation is about finding that it's real power within yourself to believe that whatever you put your mind to, you can do. We were talking about real estate challenges, the joy it brings, and how to overcome the pain to get to where you need to. My special guest, McKenzie Ryan, will be telling us how on adventures, such as she's an agent that sold 1.89 million NYC condo over FaceTime. Could you believe it? In a time like this, where we're struggling, how are we going to make ends meet? What method are we going to utilize to change our business? She just did that. Well, we'll be asking her how she did it and all her wonderful story. McKenzie, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Can you tell me who you are in just a few words?
In a few words, I am a open-minded, lifelong dreamer with a ton of determination and lots of love in my heart to give back to my clients, my family, and to the greater world.
You started this realtor job at a very young age. You're competing in a space that people have done for many years, and they've got to the place where they've been. But you started and you've been successful at it. Before you started it, can you tell a little bit about your background? What was it like growing up?
Well, growing up was very interesting for me, and I'm still growing up even at this age. My upbringing really revolved around a lot of training as a gymnast and a lot of training as a ballerina. So I started training for the Olympics as a gymnast when I was 4 years old. It's something that I wanted to do and I brought to my parents as a passion of mine. And my parents have always been under the belief that, anytime I say there's something that I want to do, they know I'm going to do it 10,000%. And I spent most of my life going to practice after school, on the weekends, in the summer, lots of intensive programs, going to competitions, winning, losing, working harder, trying to improve as much as I could, getting to travel all throughout the US, getting to travel the world. When I was 7, Random House wrote 2 books about me and my career. So I spent a lot of time in front of people, a lot of time performing, a lot of time practicing. And through my training as a gymnast, I started doing ballet as well. And so most people think I did one and then did the other. I don't know how I was crazy enough to do them both simultaneously and also go to school. But I did. And so my upbringing really was spent in the creative arts, in hardcore competition, and fascinating combination that has definitely brought me to where I am now.
That is fascinating that you did both gymnast and ballerina. I mean, it's just because they're really tough things to do. It's not something you just wake up and just say, this is something I want to do. This is something that requires lots of practice, right?
Right. Yeah, a tremendous amount of practice, but even more than practice, I mean, I think what you bring to your practice is just so specific. You know, anyone can show up for 3 hours after school and go through the motions. But I think when you bring a level of determination to create something incredible of yourself and your life, and you know, you're working towards this future vision that you have. And I use vision because I feel as though vision encompasses something so much larger than what we often identify as a goal. A vision means you spend a lot of time really visualizing what your future success will look like. And then you're basically working through your present time trying to get to there. So bringing my vision to, you know, my practices, my competition, I think that set me on a path that was just totally different than your regular kind of like kid doing gymnastics. Like what I was doing, I think was a lot more pointed and a lot more specific and a lot more elevated because I had that vision in my mind.
And Mackenzie, when you look back at what started and doing the gymnast, how did this help in shaping your career in real estate? What lessons did you learn from that?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite questions to answer because I always say real estate is my Olympics. The overlap between rhythmic gymnastics and real estate are just tremendous. As a gymnast, you know, we are solo, you know, we're solo athletes basically out there. So there's no one to rely on except for ourselves, of course, which is a direct kind of a very direct correlation to real estate where, you know, we rely on ourselves to produce, I mean, to produce income, to produce a career. But even more so than just the logistical kind of, you know, framework of it, what goes into being a great gymnast is believing in yourself, believing in your work ethic, having a great work ethic, meaning you have to do certain things every single day to keep building a career that's not just for the moment, but, you know, long term. You know, as a rhythmic gymnastic, gymnasts, we use apparatus. So like the ribbon, ball, hoop, clubs. And so at any point you can toss your, you know, hoop up into the air. And while it's up in the air, you're doing 10 tricks that are insane, like legs over your head, tumbling on the ground. And then you're catching the hoop with like your leg and like you're contorted in some crazy position. Similar to real estate, similar to real estate, we are doing so much at any given time with a million pieces of apparatus up in the air. And what we're doing is so specific. It's coming down to negotiations, numbers, the way we market our properties, the way we communicate with our clients, communicate with the, you know, with the market itself. And so while your hoop is up in the air, you're probably doing 100 very like high level tricks, I'll call them. And then having to catch that hoop on like some crazy trick that you're doing next. And you're doing it while smiling, being graceful, being poised, being collected. And you're out there on your own while there are a lot of people, you know, your judges who are watching you to see how well you perform. And of course, you're competing ideally to win. So being a gymnast, I would say, I told my real estate firm the other day, just go recruit USA gymnasts and you'll have the best brokerage in all the lands.
Absolutely. You know, it gives you that discipline. It gives you that toughness, also that ability that from a young age, that competition is not it's not something you should be afraid of, but instead embrace it and work hard and be as better, if not better than the other person. But when did your love for real estate really start? Because it's not something, I mean, gymnastics is something it's there, it's a sport, but it's so, as much as there's so much similarity, it's still such different things to do. One is very sporty, one is, you know, you require lots of practice to make it perfect. And this is practice on your individual self. Why the real estate thing is all about being marketable, selling things to other people. When did your love shift towards this real estate thing and you knew this is your market?
Yeah, as a gymnast, the lifespan of your career isn't that long. Truthfully, if you watch the Olympics, you'll see a lot of gymnasts who are 15 years old, 16 years old. That's kind of 16 to 20 is your prime as a gymnast. So I had been training for so long, and coming coming from like my family that believed deeply in education, and also just having this longing to be a little bit more of a normal kid. Normal as in getting to go home after school and maybe go on a play date, or wake up on Saturday morning and watch cartoons instead of heading to training. I think there were a lot of factors that were driving my passion and my like longing for greater inner happiness in a different direction. And so during that kind of like discovery phase, or shifting goals or shift in vision, I was 13 and in 7th grade. And I had this New York City history class that I just found so fascinating. And we got to study New York City from its inception, looking at it from a trading post at the southernmost tip of Manhattan Island, founded as New Amsterdam, and really study its growth into this massive metropolis that we now live in, and that of course is known as the center of the world. So I became really fascinated because of history, and New York has such fascinating history. And what's even more amazing is that anywhere you walk around New York, you are surrounded by its history. Of course, original Dutch New York no longer exists because it burnt down, and then the second iteration of New York was also burnt down in the Revolutionary War. So I had to find other ways besides just going to the museum or reading books to kind of feel New York's true history. And I found the best route to be open houses, going to old historic properties, townhouses, old like 1900 co-op apartments, or flats as you'd call them. And I just found, looking at floor plans, like I know this will sound a little wonky, but a floor plan is so historical because it tells you how we used to live. We used to have much larger floor plans because we had families and we had staff, and we had a different way of living. And so by studying the floor plans as New York evolved, you can see this massive shift from being more of like a family city to more of a single city. And the rise of like 1-bedroom apartments, studio apartments, like trying to get people to buy into different ways to live in real estate, I think was so fascinating to me that I wanted to get started. And I had this like really great competitive background. And when I was 13, 14, I was already light years ahead of my time because I'd spent so much so much of my time rigorously training. And I was a very composed, professional young lady. And so I would write to every single real estate company, seeing if they were looking for interns. And I would walk around New York City with my resume. And anyone who would talk to me or listen to me about real estate was like a fantastic day for me. And so what I did was I designed what I called my own real estate MBA program. And in New York, you have to be 18 to get your real estate license. So I had about 3 or 4 years before that time. And so I decided I'd work in every facet of real estate until I was licensed and I could sell residential real estate. So I worked in development, I worked in leasing, I worked in commercial, I worked in industrial, I worked in marketing and sales. And so by the time I was 18, I was like, I know what I'm doing. And that's how I got started. And I built my business for the last 11 years now, like brick by brick, floor plan by floor plan.
That no, you truly did. You really did build it brick by brick because it was also shared from that discipline of your youth times, and you know, persistence.
Yeah.
You kept going. When did you make your first sales?
I made my first sale when I was 17. Um, and I know that won't add up with what I just said of having to be 18. But when I was 17, that was around 2008, 2009 during the financial meltdown. And New York's real estate landscape was like drastically shifting before our eyes because 2004, 2005, 2006 were the height of the market, like the kind of first big boom that New York real estate had in a long time. And then to see it, just a year and a half later, really start to tumble. You'd see apartments that were once listed for 3 million asking 999,000. Like, so I saw this opportunity to, talk to my parents about investing and buying an apartment in this market that was drastically discounted. Now, of course, it was a very scary time because, job security was not great. Getting a mortgage was not easy. There's credit freeze. The entire world was experiencing this like really horrific time. And for me, it was hard just as a teenager, getting ready to apply for colleges and, that sort of being, the financials of it being worrisome and, having two older siblings. So the reason I am telling the story is because I got into real estate wanting to help people elevate their lives. And buying real estate, investing in real estate, seeing opportunities that people don't often see for themselves, and then having to, create a strategy that gets them from point A to point B, can actually be extremely beneficial in increasing someone's sort of financial stance in the world or elevating someone's level of opportunity and exposure. So for my family, I wanted to find a way to help. And, I found this apartment that was about 50% off, and banks weren't lending, but this building was offering private financing. And so we were able to, set up the deal through the building directly. And we closed on November 9th, 2009, the day I think I took the SATs. And it was a really big deal because just, that was 2009 and 2013. Our family sold the apartment for drastically more, and it did really change, it really did help us, move to that kind of next level, if you will. So that's when I did my first deal, but more importantly, that's when I learned the power of being able to change people's lives through real estate. And I think that today is still what I'm most proud of in my business.
I'm really proud of you that you were able to do that because, like you said, you were able to elevate your family and get them to a better place. And you also saw value as well because in a few years' time you sell that place, they
Yeah.
sell it on, and they always make money. I love the fact that you're in the real estate, but one of the things that we always see is the glamorous side of it. Everyone sees so glamorous, especially now. There's so many TV programs which is glamorizing it, making it feel like, okay, all you need to do is look pretty, turn up, and just sell. It's so easy. You find the
Yeah. And real estate falls from the sky.
Could you tell us the bits that we don't see on television? The bits the difficult bit, which we don't really see, because when we see it, it seems so, oh, we have my client list. I'm just going to call that client list, and bam, bam, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
McKenzie, is that really the realism that you guys do nothing and just look glamorous and just sell houses?
I would love if that were the case. I would love if just real estate fell out of the sky for me to sell on any given day. I think the reality of it is that aside from the interiors of the apartment, and sometimes, and that can also go the other way, and also the price point of it, and that can also go the other way, real estate is actually not a very glamorous world. Real estate is a very challenging field because I know we think of homes as the product that we're selling, but it's actually, there's no home for me to sell if I don't know the person who owns it, or I don't know their attorney, or I don't know someone to introduce me to all these people. Real estate, and I'll just call them houses. It's not like real estate agents get a list of houses that are assigned to them and we're told, hey, go sell this, figure out the price, list it, do all that. We have to source everything from top to bottom. So I have to know enough in real estate so that if I do get the opportunity to speak with a homeowner who's thinking of selling, I'm able to communicate effectively that I'm the right person to sell it with 25,000 other real estate agents out there. Um, I have to have the resources, meaning like I need to know home sale values. I need to know what's called price per square foot in their neighborhood or in their building. I need to have like a great attorney on hand. Like, to even get to that point, there are thousands of conversations and trial and error and myth fires that we even have to go to. So I think I think what people don't see is 99%. Because like it's fun to see like the photography of the home, but like, you know, that home belongs to someone. And so you have to work so hard to get to know people, to get them to know, like, and trust you. You have to establish yourself as an advisor in the field. So, you know, even what I'm saying right now, there's like a drop down menu, like falling in my head, being like, no, there's this and this and this and this and this. There's so many nuances that like real estate is its own very specific language. And, even learning how to speak the real estate language and communicate it takes years. And then finding people to work with, like finding buyers, finding sellers, finding renters, it's a non-stop hustle. I think is the best way.
I just love the way you describe that pain, because a lot of people just see the other side and forget the non-stop hustle, the non-stop contact with every different various people you have to work with. And you have to be a people's person as well, because sometimes you just don't want to talk to these people, but you have to learn to talk to the accountant, talk to lawyers, talk to the owners, who you might see their house and there's a big value in that house, but they just need to do a bit of tweak. And in their mind, this house is absolutely perfect. When you come across something like this, how do you use the language of sales to tell them, I think we need to do a little bit of tweak on this house?
It's a great question, because you want what's best for them. So that's always where I'm leading from. Like, I think I'm probably one of the most like sincere, genuine real estate agents out there. And when telling you that story a couple minutes ago of how I started is important, because like I actually care so much that any advisory that I have is coming from a place of sincere care to get them the very best that we possibly can. So that is how I always position it. Like, this is coming from a place of how can we do our very best and let's do it together. In a competitive market, and New York's a competitive market, and it always will be until the end of time. To do your very best, you have to be detail oriented. Ideally, you have to have some good taste and the right resources to help execute on, getting a property ready to go to market. The same way, if we were going to our own wedding, we'd probably have a little bit of back end work to do to get our hair done, or maybe you don't need to, but if you want to present something in a certain way, you do have to do some legwork no matter what. And so that's my approach, is always leading from a place of, I want to do the very best that I can for you. I want you to get the most out of this so you can be happier. And so if we can do a couple small things at an affordable price where it makes sense, we get the return on, we get that return in the long run, I always highly advise my clients that we take those extra couple small detail steps.
I love Mackenzie, when you look at your day, one of the things I saw your, in an article you were inside, you talked about how your typical day, what your day starts like. Could you tell us about when Mackenzie gets up in the morning to when Mackenzie has to go to bed? What is a typical day like? And what are your strategies around your brand building, the things you call the 3 pillar? So,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I think I have this belief that how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I think the morning is probably the best the best place to start testing that theory for most of us. If we wake up and we just like start throwing things everywhere and we're like, I need to check my email and I need to like check the stock market and I need to read all my text messages and go on social media, that to me feels like a very overwhelming way to live life, because like you are now handing over all of your personal control, autonomy, and likely mental stability to so many factors that aren't thinking, oh, let's make sure Mackenzie feels energized and recharged and ready to, properly take on the 1,000 things that are awaiting her. So that's like the first kind of like theoretical. How you do one thing is how you do everything. Waking up to me is such an important time to just have some quiet solitude moments. I do not check my phone when I wake up. I don't sleep with an alarm either. So like I have more of a natural body clock, which does take a while. And sometimes it oversleeps by 30 minutes as well. But that's my body saying you can relax, you need to rest. So my morning really looks like I wake up around like 7 a.m., nothing too crazy. And the first thing I like to do is just think in my head, like, what am I grateful for that happened the day before? Because when you operate from a space of gratitude, your life really does change. And I went through like a massive, massive mental life shift a couple years ago that really helped me. It really helped me accelerate my professional career, my personal relationships, and then just like my actual happiness, like feeling happy about me, which I think a lot of people may not think about. They'll tie in their productivity as to whether they're happy or not, or they'll tie in someone else's opinion or public opinion as to whether they're happy or not. But I think in the morning when you wake up and you're just kind of existing in your own space, that's such a great time to think about what might have taken place the day before, and not just the easy, like, I'm happy for my health, I'm happy for my family. But something like yesterday, I just saw this little girl on her scooter, and she was dressed in this fun little kid outfit, and she was just so happy and just like, wee, like scooting down the street. And I was so grateful to see her happiness and her experience of being a young, small person existing in this large New York world. And that's the special shift that you start to see in everything that happens, being grateful for good and bad. So the first thing I do is just take note of my gratitudes. I try to think of 3. I meditate in the morning as well. I do, it's called Wim Hof. Many people know him. Sometimes it's Wim Hof, sometimes it's just breathing for like 5 to 10 minutes. And then I write my affirmations, which also changed my life. Like just training, it's so interesting because like we can train our brains to think really negative things about ourselves, and like we'll berate ourselves and like, you're not good enough and you can't do this and you don't have this. But like the same way we do that, we can also just do it the other way. It's because we're so used to having maybe negative stuff that we have to retrain our brain and refocus it. So that's what affirmations are for. And then if I can get in a workout early enough, I will. It's a little cold in New York right now, so I'm doing a couple more at-home workouts and going to the gym, but it will all even out. And then I go to my office and I work. I work on client building and business development. So before I go out and do showings and all of that, I take like 2 to 3 hours to just work in my office. Yeah, and that is my core morning / early afternoon.
Okay, then you go into the afternoon and you just take then you debrief in the afternoon. Then
Yeah,
how
so
does
I
it
go
end?
yeah, so I go into the afternoon, leaving it open for real estate business, meaning showings, taking client meetings, taking client phone calls, you know, being on top of all the existing business I have, all the future business I have. I call it working in the business, whereas the morning is working on the business. When I'm in the business, it's all client based. So just looking to show my properties, meet with buyers, meet with sellers, and of course, be in touch with everyone else that I know so that homes can fall from the sky for me to sell.
No, no, it's absolutely true because your day seems really organized in some certain way. How did you learn to structure this and keep it so focused?
Yeah, I actually cannot take credit for this. I went to a real estate sales or training course called Ninja, and I hired a real estate coach, and we just really focused on like having those hours to build the business and having those hours on my own versus like so many people will just wake up, go to 79th Street for showing, go to 10th Street for a showing. And it's like if you looked at a map, you'd be zigzagging back and forth. And that doesn't really leave enough time for you to create a long term sustainable business. And maybe it does. Like, I don't want to speak and say, there are plenty of people who have so many different methods, but this one works well for me because it cuts down the amount of craziness and allows me to maximize my time and my potential as well.
I'm glad that yeah, and I'm glad you shared this because I mean, so many young people might be looking to join the real estate business and not quite sure how to organize their time. But you've just really given a clear insight that it can be done. The more organized you are, the better it is for you long term. I have to ask, the pandemic. I mean, there's nowhere in the world that no one doesn't know about the COVID-19. It's brought on a whole new way of doing business. I mean, you have to figure out what best way to still serve your clients. But that didn't stop you because you was able to sell a $1.89 million NYC apartment over FaceTime.
Yeah.
How did you get that initiative that something needed to be done even though we're in a pandemic?
Yeah. Well, the pandemic was obviously very challenging and still is a very challenging world to navigate, especially when you're talking about a face-to-face business.
Yeah.
And like for me, it just came from a place of always looking to share value with people. And so, especially for my clients, some clients hire me because I do have a presence on social media, and it's one more avenue where most people are already kind of like existing within their phone to
Yeah.
get their properties in front of buyers, in front of other real estate agents. And, so many of my colleagues and I communicate through social media and Instagram, where we do see, so sometimes it's just so simple as you see a property and you say, oh, I was just looking for this for my client, let's set it up. And so that came about because I had like posted a video of this property I was getting ready to bring to the market. It's part of my strategy. Before I ever launch anything, I take some behind the scenes, like, shots and, share a little bit with people, going through the process. And, it's, a buyer saw it. We set up a couple of FaceTime, I don't know, FaceTime calls, FaceTime showings, if you will. And we were able to do the whole deal remote, or I was here and they weren't. So I think it just comes from like looking at every possible avenue that you can use to help someone, especially our clients, and, going that extra step and trying to do it. I always say if you're going to do something, like, try to do it well.
Yeah.
And so, to me, it's like I could take a video with the lights off and it looks horrible, or you can spend an extra like 1 minute and say, well, if someone does see this and they're interested, this shows well. Because, like I said, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So I really try to bring that like elevated perspective to everything that I do.
And that's so important because that, yeah, you really said it all. It's how you do one thing, because this is such a new thing. No one really has done that before, and there you come up with this unique idea. How was it convincing the client that was selling the property that this is something that needed to be done to help speed up the process? Was that difficult?
No, it wasn't. I lay out a plan with, I lay out my marketing plan and show my clients every single thing that I'm planning to do for them before we launch the property, and then once we've launched the property. And so, it's like if you deliver a nicely wrapped gift to someone, and it's already, I don't, you kind of decrease any pushback that they might have. So it wasn't difficult at all. I try to almost pre-negotiate and get everything as, as wrapped up as it possibly can be. And then it's basically bringing it to my client and saying, like, this is where we are. I think we have a little bit more leeway or leverage, and I think this is where we'll end up. And then you kind of like work on it together. So I'm always looking to bring solutions versus like a bunch of just scattered a bunch of
Yeah.
scattered problems.
Yeah, exactly, because I mean, selling your apartment already is already one big problem for and the client themselves. So anyone they've taken on board, I think they want that relaxation. They don't want someone to add more stress to whatever pain they might be going through, because there are various reasons why people sell apartments. Some
Yeah.
might be going because they're going through pain, or some might because they want a bigger home. But whatever the reason, they just want that process to be smooth and just let it go quickly, right?
And I think you really touched on it. People want to process.
Yeah.
Like there are so many agents, professionals who don't have, and this isn't specific to real estate, there are people who just don't have a process.
Mhm.
And so, what I would say to your point before about any real estate agent looking to get into the industry or just starting, trying and go on showings, try and be around real estate as much as possible, and then try to create a real process for yourself. Because I equate it to going to see a doctor, like the hospital or your doctor's office, they have a process. You sign in, you sit there for way too long. Some nurse calls you back, does a couple things, and with blood pressure, takes your notes, drops your, chart at the door, and then the doctor comes in, and then you have that secondary whatever. But that is a process, and like I think any person who goes to the doctor knows exactly what to expect. As a real estate agent or as a homeowner, most agents come in and sellers are looking, let's say you're selling your $5 million apartment. They're looking for someone who can say to you, this is exactly what's going to happen. Of course, it could be a little bit of a variation, just depending on different factors. But this is what we're planning to do. This is our plan. This is our process. And sellers and buyers as well feel much more comfortable and much more at ease when going through this crazy routine of selling a home or buying a home.
So what would you say to a seller who's nervous about trusting their biggest assets to yourself? You're a millennial, you're young. They might say, oh, I want someone who's been in this thing for many, many years. What would you say to someone like that?
Yes, and I still have to go through this with many clients. But the best thing that I've learned is to really talk with the clients about what their goals are, share my incredible level of experience and success and track record, and share that at the end of the day, ultimately it's the seller who has to pick the person they feel most confident and comfortable with. And in my mind, is it the person who will work 1000%, past the job even being done, and stay on and always be a lifelong advisor, and who's more or less still in the beginning phase of their career and wants nothing more than to be successful? Or might it be the person who's sort of at the end of their career, who perhaps is more complacent because they've been doing it for a long time and they don't need to achieve that level of success? To me, I think it really just comes down to who will actually work the hardest for you and who cares enough about you and your own success and for me, my background couldn't speak more loudly to that. Like, I care so much. I probably care too much, but I do. And I treat my clients with a very high level of like respect and dignity. And I want them to succeed the same way I wanted my family to succeed.
Absolutely. The final question before I let you go, McKenzie. What are the plans for 2022? What do you see happening in this year, 2022? What are your focus?
Big question. Lots is going to happen in 2022. In New York specifically, and actually in the US, housing prices will continue to rise. And, in terms of like volume, contract signings and closings will continue to rise as well. I think we're going to continue to see people finding opportunities to live their best lives in a number of different locations, which I think is fantastic. I think when people are driven by their pain and pleasures, as you've touched on before, and actually address them and look to improve their lives between, whether it's changing a job, changing your atmosphere, meaning your house. I think that's actually been tremendous for our society. And I'm really happy to see people going after what they really believe in and, finding different spaces to do it in. So in 2022, I think more people will follow their dreams. And I hope that our world is able to stabilize financially, stabilize in terms of the pandemic that's going on, and we're able to all just find better footing and footing that makes us more happy.
McKenzie, I really appreciate your time. This is really awesome conversation because we really touched on key aspect of the real estate market and the balancing act. That is not quite easy, but it is a wonderful career to take on, but you just have to have your ticks in the dark, so they don't, things go smoother than you least expect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.